Welcome to the Sherborn Advisory Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, February 4, 2026. The time is 7:08 p.m. We will now conduct a roll call vote to verify a quorum. I will call each member by name. When you hear your name, please respond by saying either present in person or present remotely. Stephen Bond, present in person. Laura?
Present in person.
Nora?
Present in person.
Adam?
Present in person.
George?
Present in person.
Divya?
Present remotely.
Alex?
Present in person.
You gotta mute the controller.
Thanks, Sean.
The roll call indicates that we have 7 members in person and 1 member is presently remote. With a quorum confirmed, the meeting is called to order at 7:09 p.m. Because committee members are participating remotely, all votes during the meeting will be conducted by roll call. The agenda for tonight's meeting. Jeremy, you're willing to display it if you can?
No. Sure. It just hasn't figured out. He just needs to walk away from it.
I'll read it. Review and approve meeting minutes. There were none distributed, so we'll postpone that to the next meeting. We'll be discussing operating budget presentations from the Land Use Group, Conservation Commission, Planning Board, Building, Plumbing and Electrical Inspectors, and Board of Health. Revolving fund presentation, Board of Health Immunization Clinic. There will be no capital budget presentations tonight. And then we'll finish up with advisory committee member reports. Are there any items to add to the agenda that were not reasonably anticipated at least 48 hours before this meeting and that require attention before our next scheduled meeting on February 25th, 2026? Yes, I have one. I neglected to include in the operating budget presentations the employee benefits section, which includes general ledger account numbers departments 911 through 919. Do I hear a second on that amended agenda?
Second.
Since we have to do a roll call vote, we will have to do a roll call vote. Stephen Bond, I am aye. Laura?
Aye.
Nora?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Divya?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Penn?
Aye.
So the motion carries. We will jump right into the agenda. Do any of the presenters tonight have time constraints that they would like to go first? Otherwise, we'll go in order. Okay, let's start with Joyce and the Conservation Commission.
Well, instead you get Michael, co-chair.
And I just have to excuse because I have to recuse myself
Oh, okay.
for the subject. So there we go. Just call me back.
Okay, so Michael, Lester, you'll be doing the presentation for your
Yes.
group tonight. Very good. Welcome. Thank you.
Sure. See everybody. I don't know how you want to do it, whether you all have our 2 files, the form explaining everything as well as the spreadsheet, or do we walk through that?
Yes.
So that's where you want to do it.
Yes, let's walk through comparing your fiscal 26 budget to your 27 budget and some background on the changes,
Okay.
proposed changes.
Did everybody get at least the February 3rd version of this that I sent yesterday?
They did not get the February 3rd one. They got the original one
Okay.
because I was a little bit late, so I did not distribute that one.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah. Okay, I guess what's up there is. It's a little different.
Scroll down a little bit. There may be a date there. So that's the February.
Oh, okay, yes, the February 3rd. Okay, good. Essentially, our budget often looks very different because we haven't been fully staffed for quite a number of years. And so this is hopefully this year is getting close to fully staffed and we got the budget for next year. we've started in fiscal 26, current year is when we started with, our agent as really truly full-time, close to full-time. And it was an experiment as to whether she'd take 32 to 35 hours. After whatever, by now, 6, 8 months of experience. 35-hour a week, it works, and with a lower administrative assistant. And that seems to be what performs well best for the town. Your agent also needs to help some of the other departments, coordinating on certain things, such. Overall, I don't know where to start with. Overall, we've basically stayed within the guidance of slightly less than the staffing level of it is below, a little bit below the COLA increase. And the expenses are 0% change. So at the highest level, we're basically meeting guidance, maybe $500 less. And we now have a stable setup with the agent working 35 hours, although we have to go hire an administrative assistant again now because Doval poached our assistant. So we'll and then it'll be for less time anyway. So it's a good time to have had that change and coordinating with the planning board to hire somebody jointly. That would be, I guess, they actually have in their budget, something like that, something like 2.5 hours. But we have the 9.5 hours. So we look to hire somebody for about 12 hours overall. I don't know what level of detail to go into. Well, you've got people questions. I mean, there was the 3 pages write up explaining it all.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
In fiscal 26, there was a $2,000 charge to dues and subscriptions, where the budget was $750. So I'm just wondering, on your fiscal 27 budget, are you going to be looking for the $850, or are you going to go back to the $9,000, the $2,000?
Which line are you talking about?
On the dues, subscriptions, memberships line
Right, that's
in fiscal 26,
right.
so far has been spent $2,000 in that line item.
Well, then probably something with the wrong line item. I guess I can't attest to that one in particular. Have to go look at what it is, but there is sometimes I think some stuff maybe from meetings and seminars got put in there. It varies very widely as to how many conservation commissioners go to various trainings that come. They're at a discount because we're a member of this association. But I could believe that what's in there now is both the membership fee for the belonging, which is about the $750 or $850, and plus maybe there's some of the horse trainings got lumped in there.
All right, we'll go back and check that. Are you on budget for fiscal 26? Do you anticipate
We'll probably give back.
deficit?
Deb does have her hand up. Maybe she has an answer to that question.
Yeah.
Deb?
Yeah. Part of what's in that that line item is the fee for the AI clerk. Conservation Board of Health and Planning Board are paying for that in fiscal year 26. Next year, that cost is going to go into the IT budget. So, but for FY 26, the cost of that AI clerk is in these individual budgets and in the actuals.
Right. We will be under budget this year, primarily because we don't have a administrative assistant funds. So, yes, and that's partly why we absorbed. I don't know whether we did absorb the larger share of that new software doing minutes because we could fit it into our budget for now, but next year it'll be there. And part of why our staff level is a little bit below the level funded with the COLA is because we expected to spend about or $500. We expect. We're lowering it by $400 or $500 because that's probably our share of what's now going to be in the IT budget for this software. So we're basically paying for it by adjusting our budget.
I think as a technical issue,
Mhm.
from a budgeting perspective and appropriation, the payment from the wetlands filing fees
Mhm.
shows up in revenue as opposed to netting the expense. So I believe that you showed the 5125 as a reduction of your expenses. However, that would show up on the revenue side, and the appropriation would be the gross amount.
The reason I did it that way is because this is from the point of view of the town operating budget. The wetlands filing fee fund sits outside of the town operating budget.
Agreed, but if the money comes from the fund and goes into the operating fund, it's part of revenue as opposed
I
to.
think it goes directly into to pay for the staffing. Well, I mean, that's what I was told, that it doesn't go back into operating.
Jeremy, what's your perspective on this? Because it goes into that.
Yeah, right. I mean, I
Special
don't think it
revenue.
makes much of a difference either way, but.
I just want to be consistent
Well, I
from
think it's
department to department.
More than to be consistent from the way that was accounted for in FY 26 to going into FY 27. So,
It sounds like it's discretionary, that it's not assured that payment is going to be made.
well, I think that's the way FY 26 was set up.
Right, the same way.
You know, it was that 5 hours of additional time above what was budgeted at 30 hours per week. If needed, those 5 hours were going to be paid for out of the
Right,
wetlands
but
filing.
I mean, Deb could answer. I thought that basically money from that state filing fee fund goes directly against a particular
Yeah.
expense. It doesn't go into the operating fund and then cover.
But as proposed now FY 27, it's a solid 35 hours per week. It's not a discretionary 30 or 35.
Right.
So that is a change that you should be aware of, I guess. I'm not, how is that accounted for now?
It would go right from that filing fee against the expense of the conservation agent. So I would make a credit to the filing fee account and credit it to the salary account. So the salary account would be reduced from funds from the wetland filing fees.
Is that what's happening in this current fiscal year, FY 26?
Well, Michael and I had a little different interpretation of what the range from 2 to 5 hours meant. There's nothing been transferred as a year to date because I thought that if the agent worked over 30 hours, so that additional 5 hours would be paid for from the wetland filing fees. Michael's interpretation was if the salary amount went over in total, then they would use money from the filing fees to pay for whatever the salary amount was over budget.
Yeah, I mean, that,
Okay, well, it seems like we need to work that out as to how it relates to the
Well-
FY 27 budget.
And FY 26 actuals as well.
Because that would, to Stephen's point, would make a difference in how the budgets compare FY to 26 to 27, what the actual increase in the budget is that's being requested for 27.
I think that given that it doesn't ever go through the operating budget, the revenue from that does not go through the town's operating budget. That's why we kept it as a separate payment. And even when, and part of, whether there's a difference opinion or not, part of when we did the 30 hours back then, I knew it wasn't going to be 30 hours, and it was always expected that we'd see if we go over budget. Basically tried to keep it level funded from the operating budget. We tried to stick to that point and use the other funds when needed, if we would go above that.
Well, why don't we take this part offline, because this is a kind of a technical accounting issue, and we'll resolve that. Sure. What are the other uses, so there's about a little over 50,000 in that special revenue fund. Do you have any current plans for any usage of that?
The income goes up and down a lot, and if we stay fully staffed, then we have to use it to pay for things, pay for the staffing. Then that budget would possibly be used up over time. Basically, to try to keep it as make it sustainable, that we can keep the current salaries in line, paid, and keep our operating budget share within the level funding mandate. So it'll be spent down if we just stay fully staffed going forward.
Others have questions for Michael?
Yes, I'll add that as you're talking about other funds. There is that other fund there with about $30,000. We're preparing. That's to be used for open space management. We're preparing a plan that will come before the select board with a multi-year plan for improvements on a sort of 800 acres that we maintain for the town. And so that's where that uses would go. And we do plan to raise our fees to see if we can get greater cost coverage there. Because right now we're probably around, I don't know, 25 or 30%. I think that's a whole other policy issue as to how high it should go in terms of what should the fees for any department do to cover of their own department's expenses. But I think it's reasonable to sort of aim for more like a 30 or 40% coverage, given the town, most of the town benefits from all of the work we do. And so it's reasonable to share that burden, not just place it on the applicants. And so we're going to try to look at our fees this year.
Where does the money for the conservation gift fund come from? Those donations?
I think can't tell if it's named correctly. I think that is money that we managed to collect as part of, we had a series of grants from the Department of Conservation and Recreation where we did some co-financing or co-funding of it, our staffing. And somehow, some years ago, we had a whole series of them doing improvements at the Barber Reservation, working on invasive plants management and other things. And that somehow we managed to have a surplus of that. That came out of all those efforts that we have that. I have to confess that I can't exactly say how that came up, but it's basically, we've been earmarking it to capital improvements on the land that we're not going to spend it unless we basically go through the select board and give a sense of what we want to do on the town properties like the Barber Reservation or the Bailey and other things. So we'll come forward with a plan. We have used it for certain projects already in terms of clearing back around the edge of fields and things like that, stone walls, and doing a little forestry stuff.
But it goes to the select board for approval.
Yeah, we'll go. We figure it's reasonable to use them as a sounding board for that kind of stuff.
There is a hand up on the Zoom. Sean, Clayton.
Sean, comment?
Hi, thanks. As someone who paid an extremely high wetland filing fee for a single family home I bought, I would point out that I believe state law, at least ethically, you should not be banking the wetland filing fees. Those are intended to be paying for the cost borne by the Conservation Commission to file. So it should be going back to pay for the agent's time. The fact that we have $52,000 sitting in that means we're either overcharging people or it should be supplementing what the town's paying for the salaries. We shouldn't just be hanging on to that money. That's a fee that was borne by people trying to do work on their property in the wetlands. So it doesn't seem right that we're just sitting on that money.
Well, we hope to spend it down based because of the gap on the salaries. If we're looking at about $5,000 or $6,000, almost $6,000 a year, and the fund, the income on the fund goes up and down a lot. So we hopefully will be using it up over the next 5 years, and we can see if it's If it still remains a significant balance, then we could escalate that or change it. We just want to see how it goes. Because we're just starting to use this fund for this purpose of
Yeah,
bringing the extra.
maybe I'm not.
And also,
what
the fund-
Average is about $5,200 per year on average for the filing fee revenue.
also, Sean, most of the,
What was the theory on why this goes into a special revenue fund as opposed
it's
to
a state rule, it's a state
rule?
basically, Sean, most of the money you spent for the, your fees were really local bylaw fees.
Yeah, that's what I'm
That
talking
go straight into the
about.
operating revenue. That goes straight into
Well,
the town's revenue.
$5,000.
Oh, 5,000.
Where does that go?
It went into most of it goes into the operating budget, operating revenue.
So there's
Where?
two separate kinds of fees. There's bylaw fees that go into the general operating budget. And then there are these wetland filing fees, which are a separate set of.
The state has its own set of fees. The state fees, half of it goes to the state and half of it stays with the town. And we, for years, everything went to the town. That it turned out that that's not legal, that you have to separate the state, our town share of the state's fees have to be kept in a separate fund. They have to be spent on wetland protection issues. And we made that change, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something like that.
Okay, so there's two separate sets of fees there.
Right.
Yes,
The majority-
Stephen, if you look at that last tab, which says revenue, that's the operating revenue fee. Not, no, the tab on the bottom where right now it's highlighted, yeah, go to the next one, revenue. That is the other fees that we receive. The hearing fees. That is the operating revenue.
And where does that go?
It goes into the operating revenue, into the general fund.
Okay, those fees go directly into the general fund via local receipts.
Correct.
And then this other
Same.
filing fee is what is separate.
Correct.
And that wetland filing fee on that table is the town's 50%.
I assume so. When they make the deposit, they put it into the different categories.
So is the town collecting 100% of the fee and then there was some back to the state?
No. They write two checks.
Two checks. Okay, good.
But when you pay one to the state, one to the town, and then the town check has to be split between the operating revenue and the state filing fee part. That stays with the town.
Okay. Is this fee structure published? Is it on the website?
Oh, yeah, it's part of the regs. The state stuff hasn't changed in decades. And ours haven't changed very much either. Good.
Anything else? Thank you, Michael.
Any feedback on anything or? I don't know.
Not yet, but you will get some.
Oh.
You said the administrative assistant hours dropped, but that they'll probably go up next year, like in the next fiscal year.
No, I guess maybe I misspoke. The administrative assistance hours will stay at that sort of lower level, about 9.5 hours. But we're just looking for now, when we hire somebody and going forward into the next fiscal year. Probably be not.
So we're just gathering all the information in the aggregate, and then we'll be compiling it, then deciding what to come back to each department. Question.
Okay, sure. And that's, we can talk about technical accounting stuff.
Well, that's what we get paid.
Since I do a lot of that as a treasurer of various groups. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Why don't we do the planning board next, Heidi?
So changes from last year, they're very slight. You have salary change. I have a 3-hour-a-week position for an administrative clerk. That is empty currently. I'm trying to see if we can combine the hours with the conservation aid and make it a land use person that would work in both departments, 2.5 hours. I'm going to allocate out of the 3, the other half. Now, the other half of an hour is going to go towards the clerk AI minute portion for next year. So this year, the clerk AI minutes cost, let's say, $3,600, and we decided to split it between 3 departments because we have by not having the administrative assistant positions, there was money in the accounts that could cover it. We are actually helping out other departments, including advisory, by covering these costs. We see a chunk, about $1,200, that will be allocated to the planning board, conservation, and Board of Health, probably in the dues and subscription area. That was not in there previously. Next year, we are budgeting that this amount would be split between the 8 boards that will be using AI. So our portion is about $500. And that's why by reducing our administrative clerk position a half hour, it saves about $700. That would be our portion that is moving to IT to cover this going forward. Other things on the expense on the bottom side besides salaries, there's not many changes. I've tried to cut down a few of the items, such as reducing, trying to have postage, but reducing some of the other areas if we can to cover that. The whole amount is going up $150, and that is mainly due to the increase in postage that we have for hearings and publicizing that. We have 1 hearing notice that gets sent out. So just under $1,000, just 900 and change for every notice we sent. There's always going to be an annual one. Try to budget it as tight as possible. And the only other one that's going up is the subscription fee. That subscription amount is for Metro West Regional, a group that the planners and the select board members belong to, and that is our portion. We don't receive the bill until closer to June, so I'm putting an estimate that it's going to go up $100 from this next.
Are you on budget for fiscal 26?
Yes, pretty close. We're not within these exact categories. The categories are going to vary, but the bottom line should be. Do you want to review any of the other budgets that is under my department? There was there was a public safety one on here. Was the DESA account?
Yep, that was going to ask that next. That's that special revenue fund.
Right. So that is, it's really more of something that Sean would use. So we have an agreement with the DESA for a special permit that they will pay a certain amount of hours that would cover police duties or any other public safety items. And that amount is about $24,000 a year. It used to go right in the general fund, but it was supposed to go into a special revenue fund. So it just now has a couple of years of special revenue fund money that has been accumulating. And Sean has recently used this for, Sean, is this going to be for some of the public safety? You used it for the flashing lights, I think, for Western Ave. You may not be.
Is that for traffic calming?
Traffic calming. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so this would be sort of funding available for the Public Safety Committee to use, related to the impact that the investment project had on Sherborn. So, and that's fairly broad, not just Western Ave, but it's a broad impact that the Public Safety Committee utilized.
So it's kind of not quite a planning board item, but it was I put here because our special permit generated revenue.
It's from a planning board special permit triggered this.
Was that 24 an annual?
Yes.
So that's to be paid. So that 50,000 is going to go up to 75 less.
Was anything else that's spent before we get the next amount in July?
So when you meant like the stoplight, for example, on Coolidge, was that flashing stoplight and like things like that?
Would be things like that, but that wasn't these funds were not utilized for things like that. It would be tied to the impact that the SF project has. I mean, the Sherborn Road net.
So you're saying that money's supposed to be coming in July of each year? Okay, so it doesn't look like that's been received yet. Deb, do you know if that July 25 payment was received?
We did receive the one, it might have come in June 3rd. I'm not sure. It's like right around that time frame. But we did receive, we're not due to bill again for this next year.
All right, the other one that's still open as a town meeting article last year was the bylaw review and maps, the $75,000 free cash item. Can you give us a little update on the status of that project?
Sure, that is actually just started this last week. So we'll see some of the first expenses coming through in the next month. We've hired a consultant, and also there will be some legal firm giving some consulting advice on the legality of some of the issues we have. Very good working group, I think, with Concom, building inspector, some other people involved as well to really start our whole review.
The budget sufficient, 75 to.
I was able to augment it with the grant, so
How much was the grant?
95,000. So we will be looking at our full bylaws and also the planning board regulations.
Do you have a target date?
We're hoping to go to town meeting April 27th. And this also includes some mapping updates that will be spent, so it's not all going just to the bylaws. The mapping portion is being worked on with us, and we'll probably hear more about him after you do.
Questions from the advisory committee for planning board?
I mean, that was from before, right? 75. That has nothing to do with coming up.
Correct. That was approved at the
Yeah.
town meeting in April of 25.
What's sunset mean?
Excuse me?
It says sunset 6/30/2028. What is that?
So that means if we don't lose any of the money, it gets put back to the general fund.
This was funded via free cash, and during the appropriation at town meeting set that restriction. It hadn't been used by a certain date, then it would roll back to free cash. Not all of those appropriations are set up that way, but this one was.
Who's the grantor?
Community one-stop station. It's a state grant. It was a small and rural town.
Planning grant. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of a one-stop program now, so they all just have one in.
Is there a place where the 95,000 shows up anywhere?
No, it is a reimbursement grant. So we have to spend the money and then we send in the invoices. So it's not money that the town will be sitting on our books.
It will show up eventually as a special revenue fund, like in that other tab where the Odessa fund was.
Yeah.
It will show up there, when the expenditures happen, it will show up there first, and when we receive the receipt, it will be there. So that's how we'll track where we are.
Okay. Thank you.
What gets spent first, the grant or the free cash?
I have the planning consultant is going to be spent first on the grant, and then the free cash is going to be from the legal side and the mapping.
Yeah, in general, we would desire to spend grants first
Right.
before town funds. That's the general philosophy on grants.
Okay, anything else? Anybody have their hand up? No? Okay. Thank you, Heidi.
Could you just try to be a little more controversial next year? These meetings are slow.
I haven't got to the warrant articles yet.
Careful what I wish for.
Actually, this year, it's not going to be a bad one.
This is for some. All right, why don't we do the inspector group next? Chris, you online?
I am online, if you can hear me.
We can hear you. Why don't you walk us through your budget for fiscal 27 budget
Okay.
request?
Almost everything is just following guidance. We don't make any major changes to salaries, positions. We don't change anything as far as supplies or travel or anything like that. So that's sort of the majority of the budget lines all follow guidance. The one thing that I am proposing to change, which is a complicated topic, so I'll try to do it in a hopefully sensible way here, is an adjustment to our software. So if we go back to COVID, right at the beginning of the shutdown, the town secured an IT community compact grant that funded an initial setup and engagement of a company to give us an online building permit software, which has been great. And it's been a huge asset for my department. It's made our lives a lot easier. It's made things a lot more efficient. And, it makes it much more convenient for applicants to be able to apply for things online and sort of check their status remotely without having to come and, bang on our door down at town hall. So we're at a point now where the building department is the only land use department that is currently using an online electronic permitting system, and the other departments are using mostly paper-based systems with some, spreadsheet kind of database, but disconnected from each other, I guess would be the best way to describe it. So we've been talking for a while about bringing all of the land use departments and really all of the town departments that would want to be involved in this into a single system that would allow all departments, all types of permits, basically any sort of public interaction where somebody requests, a thing from the town, a license, a farm pond sticker, a dog registration, whatever it may be, can come through sort of one system and have all the payments go directly to the collector and have sort of a less paper, less physical transactions having to happen. And that sort of timed out well with the fact that the system that I'm currently using in the building department will be sunset by the developer in about a year or two, which is not a bad thing. The company that we use was purchased by a much bigger company, which we actually have already been using for GIS mapping and a number of other consulting things. And so anyway, they're sort of steering us towards a different product when my current system stops operating in a couple of years. It just happens that other product also does all the other departments really well. So I'm sort of trying to take advantage of that and get out ahead of this a little bit so that we're sort of proactive here. The other thing that we're trying to accomplish with this change is if you're familiar with what Addie May has been doing with a number of different grant-funded projects to scan and digitize a lot of the land use records. She's done, I think, all of Board of Health and Conservation. We've done, I think, all of the flat file building plans downstairs, and we just have to do the physical old building jackets. And then we'll have all the data scanned. The problem is we don't have a place for it. It sort of exists in an online repository. We can go view it. It's kind of a challenge to use in its current setting. And so, again, the idea of switching over to this other permitting software is that it gives us a place to land all of those records, and it unifies it all into sort of one centralized database. If I want to see records about a property, I can see everything: conservation, board of health, building, planning, zoning, all in one place in a sort of visually pleasing environment. And I can get to access all the old records that we have scanned but not really accessible right now. So that's sort of why we're pushing to do this project and to make that change. Now, the other reason we're asking for this now is that we are able to apply for the Community Compact IT grant. Again, we've hit another cycle where we have a opening to receive that grant. So we have applied for that for the initial setup of this system, the data transfer and migration of all of these files from all these different disparate places, and plus a whole lot of tech support, a whole lot of sort of individual setting up of each department within the system. So we've got this big grant application sort of pending, and if we get it, it covers our first, the first year of operating, plus all the additional sort of initial costs. But then this number that's in my budget there, the 22,680, would become the annual maintenance fee that keeps this system running. So if we get the grant, we wouldn't actually spend any money in 27 out of the budget. It would all come out of the grant, and then we would see that number come in FY28. So I hope that wasn't too long-winded of an explanation, but that's kind of what I wanted to put it in here so we'd have a chance to talk about it, and not to be surprising everybody.
Should learn about the grant in the next 2 to 3 weeks if we're successful.
Chris, it's Laura. You and I had a conversation about this
Yes.
a few weeks ago, and you told me some things about the 22,680 would also, though it would be in your budget and represents an increase in the amount of money that would be spent coming out of your department, but it would reduce costs in some other departments. The other departments that would be using this. Can you say maybe a little bit more about that
Well, I don't know if it's going to reduce costs within the departments. It may certainly reduce man hours once it's up and running. The question that we've all sort of been asking about this is this software line. It's not exclusively a building department kind of a thing. So where does the budget for it need to live? Number one, that's a question we've all been sort of wondering. But yeah, I think it's going to be, a huge increase in sort of general efficiency within the offices when all of our stuff is in one place. It also makes for a fantastic way of being able to produce, records requests when all the information is digital. It's much easier to do those things. There's a lot less, physical scanning and moving of documents when they're already all electronic. So I would expect there to be, some increased efficiencies sort of across the board for the departments that come in online with this. And obviously it gives a huge amount of sort of public access to see sort of what's going on with their projects, right? If you've got a project that spans 4 different departments, you can now go in and sort of see like a live real-time snapshot of what's happening within each department. Is conservation approving my thing right now? Has Board of Health done it yet? You could communicate with the people that are working on your project directly through the system. It's a very good system to be able to sort of have that transparency of like what's happening, within the department and within individual projects.
Jeremy?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. You kind of touched on what I was going to ask you to expand upon a little bit. In that, I think it might be beneficial for folks to understand how building permits get signed off and who's involved in the various departments that have a part in that and currently sign off, and how that's done now and how that would be changed with this new system. And also just to make sure everybody understands this software can do more than just building permits. It can do any kind of permit. So,
Right.
to Chris's point, if this were to be expanded to be used for other approvals or permits from other boards and committees, it may be an expense that might better sit elsewhere out of this budget.
Right. Like this this enterprise version of the system, this is the sort of full town package, includes building, planning, zoning, code enforcement, health department, licensing, registration, public works, fire permits, and police. It's pretty all, it's all over the place. But it's great for those, even a department that does one or two little things, that needs to be able to give the public something, permission to park, permission to do whatever it may be. It's a really nice way to do it. And
So
again,
we're in need of a new building permit software, so it's nice that this does it well and also can do many more things. And it adds, Chris, a feature that we don't really have now, in that sort of a public-facing portal for applications and sort of a different way for customer service for building applicants. And
yeah, that's a big
real-time
feature.
tracking of how the approvals are going.
Yeah, right now with the building permits being the only online system, an applicant can come in and they can see my comments about their permit. They can make modifications to the documents that they've submitted, and we can have a little bit of back and forth through the system. But there's other review processes that are involved. The Conservation Commission reviews building permits, and that's done through like a paper form right now. The Board of Health reviews a lot of building permits, and they're still using some paper forms, and they have a sort of limited ability to make comment within the building permit suite. And so this system really integrates that, interdepartmental review process where everybody is able to sort of keep track of what's going on, and you can really customize how it works. So, if I have to say, get, a DPW approval, a conservation approval, a Board of Health approval, all on one thing, I can send each one of those out through its own review process. And again, it tracks it really well. It also does a fantastic job of tracking, inspections across all these different departments, because all these different departments do a lot of different types of inspections, as well as, sorry, what was the other thing? Oh, there's a way to like upload meeting minutes into it, and results of, zoning board hearings. It can sort of track all of these different things, where currently that information is held in a number of different places, and this puts it all in one place. So it really should be a much better user experience sort of across the board for both staff, who it's going to make our lives so much easier, but also for the applicant.
And one of the big things that the building permit software does currently, and this software, is to help capture new growth. How might this new software help?
Well, I mean, it certainly puts a reporting capability in that it's not that we don't have it now. It's hard to do now, right? If you wanted to track how many new septic systems and how many new building permits and how many new, other things are going on, we have to go look in a bunch of different places to do that. This puts it all in one place, and the reporting that it can do is really customizable. So we can sort of see what that overlap is between, new developments versus retrofits versus additions. It just gives us a lot more access to the information that we're already sort of keeping. It just puts it in a much better interface for us, and obviously gives us a lot more options for how we're going to access it.
Chris, are you on budget for fiscal 26?
We're looking great for fiscal 26. So I did a snapshot at the 50% mark of the year. We were at $174,963 in revenue, which, if you projected that for the rest of the year, would be $349,926, which is, $50,000 more than we were at last year. So that's good. I don't know how else to say that. We're looking pretty good.
What activity is generating that increase in fees? Is this new construction or something else that's going on?
Well, last year we did adjust the permit fees on the gas, plumbing, and wiring and sheet metal side, because those fees didn't really cover the cost of the inspectors that were required to do them. The minimum fee might have been $50. And if we were going to send an inspector out to go do an inspection on that, we're going to pay that guy $42 to go do it. It didn't make sense. The math didn't work. So we raised our minimums on some of those smaller permits. And that's made a pretty substantial difference from the previous years. I think we implemented that somewhere between FY 24 and 25. So you see that maybe $40,000 increase, $40,000 increase between FY 24 and 25. That was sort of picking up about a half year of that fee adjustment. So it seems to be pretty effective, and it certainly gets the revenue for each subcategory of permit much more in line with what we're spending on the actual inspectors that are doing that work.
From others? Nora?
Chris, do you think regarding this, the revenue, is it possible for you to put in how many, not, and just in the future, not now, but how many gas permits, like the number of permits?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Take me 2 seconds. I can make you a report of that.
Great. And then regarding the software, and that would be taking in receipts, would that be something the transfer station could use?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much anything where the town wants to take money and maybe a form, some information like what is your name and what is your phone number and what is your address, and give us some money and then we'll give you a thing. Yes, the system can be set up to do that. And the idea here is that it's across all departments. So if it's something that the select board, office, issues a farm pond sticker, or the clerk's office gives you a dog license, all of those things can just be built into the licensing side of the system. Sean will be able to finally do his driveway and road opening permits for DPW, which he's been asking for 10 years to be able to get some sort of an online permit for that.
Thank you.
Does that tie into the UniPay
Yes.
as well?
Yep. So right now the money that comes in through our current software gets routed through UniPay. So it all ties directly to the collector, and it just gives it like a like a data tag that assigns it to our whatever appropriate account it goes along with.
Great. Alex?
Are there peer communities who handle permitting particularly well, and are they using this software platform?
Yeah, so this is kind of interesting. We've been talking about different softwares for a couple of years now, and there's a few vendors that exist. The one that we have now, which was originally called People GIS, has maybe 40 or so towns using its system. It's a relatively small company. They got bought by this big company called Schneider Geospatial. There was a sort of mid-level sized system called Permitize, which has about 110 communities using it. And they also just got bought by Schneider. And so now those two products are merging together into this one, it's called Geo Permits. But the idea is that everybody that's on those two platforms is going to be merging onto this at some point in the next year or two. There's a very high level, expensive one called OpenGov, which towns like Needham and Wellesley use, but the operating costs are obscene compared to what this costs. So we decided not to pursue the really, really expensive version of this. But there's not a lot of other players out there. But this puts us with pretty much every town. Like we use People GIS, Holliston does, Medfield does. A number of towns right around us use that, and then if they're not using that, they're using Permitize. So we're all sort of in the same company now as far as what we're using, and so this is just sort of the next step where instead of just having the one department, it picks up the whole town.
Others? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. All right. On to Board of Health. Sarah, are you presenting that? Sarah, proceed. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah. That goes to you. I just want to see which.
Sarah, you know, it might be easier since you're in the back row. Would you mind moving forward just so that the microphone can pick you up? Thank you.
Okay. I don't think that's the most recent. That's not the one that we talked about during the meeting. So the one that you have is not the most updated version following discussion we had with the advisory liaisons and about just general hours. So most specifically the food inspector that is listed at 15,211. We will be requesting $9,127. And the supplemental health agent that is listed at 4,312. We will be requesting $6,800. So I recognize that these are some pretty big changes in general, and I can just start talking about them, or if anybody has any specific questions.
Why don't you just walk us through the different line items and the logic of the theory behind the changes?
Sure. So the appointed official or the administrator is just the COLA increase. And then same for the part-time, which is our administrative assistant. So then for the food inspector, health agent, primary, and supplemental, they are both hourly, they are all hourly positions that are vital to the day-to-day success of the board. And when I was first crafting the budget, I did it based on the average number of hours worked by each position over the past 4 years. And I looked at the different processes that they go through, and how many permits we look at. And I truly just did it based on the actual amount of work that is spent by the employees to provide in Sherborn and how many permits that they're doing. And I reflected their hourly wages to reflect the cost of living increase as well. And then I just used their hours, which they are advertised as well. The big difference here is that on Form 5, where it says that the food inspector is budgeted for 5 hours for FY27. So yep, we're actually going to be looking at a budget of 3 hours per week. And for the supplemental health agent, that is budgeted at, I think that says $80 an hour. We will actually be looking at, so sorry, it's printed really weird, $52.11 an hour. And at 2.5 hours per week. And the way that was determined, I don't know where the $80 an hour came from. That was not something I decided. I believe it's based on a historical agent who used to work with the town, but I'm not sure. And I reviewed all of the current active listings on the Massachusetts Environmental Health Association, the Massachusetts Health Officer Association, and the surrounding towns that have their salaries posted for a similar position. And I compiled all of that data to look at what the average salary people are paying hourly for this role is. and compared to what we are currently paying our consultants. That's how I calculated the total number of hours for the supplemental agent, just based on the amount that we're currently using our consultant for. And that is how we got to all of these numbers. And I have graphs and things and like projections.
You know what your fee revenue is?
Yes. Sorry, this printed not in the right. So here we go. So in 2025, our fee revenue, we have several different categories of fees. Based on the number of permits, we did $50,850 from well, septic, and other permit applications, including beavers and installers and haulers. And then when you calculate the additional fees for additional bedrooms and plan revisions to the Board of Health, we were looking at about $56,300. From building permit reviews, we brought in about $5,223. And from food, camp, and tobacco permits, we brought in about $6,300. So in 2025, we brought in $67,823.75. However, we haven't updated, the Board of Health hasn't updated their fee schedule since 2012, and that has been a project I've been working on as well, based on the salaries and based on the anticipated pay of these positions, which their primary focus is on processing permits, conducting inspections and reviews. And so based on those, we have determined that our revenue will be increasing to $86,981 in the coming after, if we were to use the same number of permits that we used to get the original revenue for the calendar year of $67,000. We're looking at $86,981.23. So
That's for fiscal 2027.
Yes.
And your fiscal 25 total was?
Fiscal 25 total was $67,823 based on the number of permits.
Are you on budget for fiscal 26?
No.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So for fiscal 26, here it is. Okay. Sorry. Currently, we are at 96% of our food inspector budget. We are at 70% of our health agent budget, and we are at 100% of our meetings and seminars budget. So the food inspector has been consistently, the food inspector has been budgeted for approximately 1.6 hours per week since the start of the position. And it is the amount of food establishments that we have in Sherborn and the amount of work that needs to be done, it can't be reflected in that time frame. So in Sherborn, we have 14 permanent food establishments, which each require a minimum of 2 inspections a year, assuming that none of these inspections prove any violations. For number of violations, the food inspector will have to return to re-inspect and then more than likely re-inspect again. Of the permanent establishment, about 50% of them required more than the mandatory 2 inspections every year, and that's a state requirement. So in addition to the 14 permanent establishments, we also had 23 temporary food establishments come through Sherborn last year and 25 mobile food vendors come through Sherborn. One of these can take anywhere from an hour to 3 hours to not only review the application, but to actually inspect the facility as well. So when you submit a food application, you have to submit the physical application. You also have to submit your ServSafe, which is your certification that you can serve food safely, your food allergen awareness, your choke save. You have to determine what type of food you're selling. And a lot of the times applicants don't always know there is a very specific definition within the food code about what a time temperature controlled for safety food is. And sometimes people just don't know what that is because in 2022, the food code was updated from the FDA to reflect new regulations for what time temperature control for safety foods are. And so it requires a lot of back and forth between the applicant and the inspector to make sure that he has the right information before conducting an inspection, which denotes the risk level of each facility as well.
So the permit fees don't cover the cost of the inspector?
At this time, no, but we're expecting with the permit fee increases, we'll be looking at about $13,000 from food permits.
Is the food inspector the only person as a town employee who can do food inspection?
No, the health agent is also has the necessary credentials at this time, and we are looking for the supplemental health agent to have the same necessary credentials to conduct food inspections. However, due to the workload of the health agent, they don't conduct food inspections at this time. We are looking to supplement that out through our shared services program with the Charles River Public Health District. However, they're still working on training our regional agent, so we're not sure what the timeline looks like on that for additional folks who can perform food inspections.
Are you qualified to do a food inspection?
Not at this time. I will say that the average number of hours that we've calculated for the food inspector over the past few years has been approximately 5 hours, but I was able to identify several administrative tasks that I am qualified at this time with my qualifications to alleviate from the food inspector so they can focus solely on inspections. So moving forward, majority of the communications with the applicants will be going through me. However, it's really important to note that a lot of the time we're communicating with applicants who never actually submit a permit. We also have to communicate with different venues who are hosting these temporary food establishments, whether that be a wedding venue or a town venue. And also some of our largest time spent food permits aren't paying. Sorry, I forgot how to word that, but the inspections that are taking the longest are actually establishments that are nonprofits and legally don't have to pay the fee, and we can't ask them to pay it. So those are the churches.
Questions?
Small thing, but you said an extra bedrooms fee. What is that?
In Sherborn, when you apply to build a new residence and a new septic system, the application fee covers 4 bedrooms, and each bedroom is an additional fee. After that, so if you want to do 5 or 6 or 7, you have to pay an additional fee because it does require additional calculations, and it just takes more time. So the permit fees are all calculated based on the amount of time it takes for the agent to review the application, and they are calculated using the next 5 fiscal years of salary with a cost of living adjustment.
And then is there a difference in rate between the health agent and the supplemental health agent?
Yes.
I was just wondering why there seems to be a pretty big jump between the two.
The supplemental health agent we're looking for someone who's already working full-time elsewhere and doesn't have and can commit to work in Sherborn as well. I don't know if any of the board members want to speak to that because that was a decision made more by the board than by me as to the hourly rate of the supplemental agent. Anyone wants to
It's a little hard for me to address.
It's an amorphous question, so I
think it's going to
apologize.
be a bit higher. The current. It depends on who we find. We may have to train people to be able to be a supplemental agent for the kinds of things here in town. It's easier to find people who do food inspections than it is septic and well. And septic and well is very technical, and that is where we would like to offload the current health agent and make sure that those hours that person stay below 20 a week, which has been difficult in the last several years. Although the market is changing soon, it's hard to tell if that intense rate is going to continue that we had, especially during COVID. People were flocking out to non-urban areas. So I'm not quite sure, I'm not sure where the rates came from, looking at other towns and whether that was for full-time employees and therefore not including the benefits, whereas we would not be offering benefits. Right. Because, as I mentioned, and Sherborn has done this for many years for lots of inspector roles, and said people had full-time job elsewhere and just came here part-time. And that way they were getting training and benefits elsewhere and not some extra income here in town. So hard to tell just yet. It has been difficult to find people who have the well and septic. Food doesn't seem to be too difficult. Even housing seems a little easier, because people work in urban areas have that nearly related here in town. So, and again, our current very experienced health agent is very fast because has been doing it for over 40 years. And full-time elsewhere. He's a health director in Asia. So
Also, the main health agent that he's full-time somewhere else, and this is just
not any longer.
not any longer.
He retired from the health director position 3 years ago.
Thanks.
Others?
I actually have a couple of questions, but I thought, probably for advisory and part for the sake of the questions, if you'll indulge me, I wanted to give some context for comparison. So, let's see, Sherborn has a population of 4,579 and 1,651 households. And we are 100% septic and 100% private well. Carlisle has a population of 5,332, about 16% higher, and 1,726 households. They are also 100% septic and 100% well. Holliston has a population of 15,713. They have 5,654 households, about 3.5 times bigger. Holliston is 100% septic. It is 100% well, split between about 20% private wells and about 80% town wells. And the town wells are treated, the water is treated, I believe, but all the well water drawn in Sherborn, in Holliston, is drawn within the town. And I wanted to read a couple of things as well, sort of reflecting these two towns. So this is from the executive summary when Holliston were last revised their Board of Health regulations. And it said, the present Board of Health regulations for septic systems were first adopted in 1974 to supplement the Title V regulations of the state of Massachusetts, which set a minimum standard but did not fully address the special requirements of the town. That was Holliston. Carlisle, this is the introduction to their Board of Health regulations. The Carlisle Board of Health feels the long-term health interests in our town can only be served by adopting certain regulations which are stricter than Title V, which was written as a minimum protection standard in 1977, latest revision date of July 7th, 2023, and was designed to all towns in Massachusetts utilizing subsurface disposal systems. Carlisle geographically is in an area of extensive wetland, high water table, and extensive ledge. Safeguards in the original septic system installations are necessary because alternative repair locations are often unavailable. Carlisle presently has no municipal sewerage to hook up to in cases of system failures. Carlisle has no town water backup, unlike a number of Massachusetts towns covered by Title V. If a resident or a business loses a well to pollution, there is no town water which can be brought in, nor any town wells at all. And then going to numbers, or other numbers, so I couldn't see it on the screen, but I gather the budget asked for 27 is now around 210,000. Is that right? Okay, so Sherborn asked is 210,000, which is about $47 per capita. and it's about 30%, 35% higher than Carlisle's budget, which has, well, we have a population of about 85% of Carlisle's. The Carlisle budget is 209,000. That is $30 per capita. Holliston, their budget ask, which is getting voted on shortly, next budget ask is 183,000. But 5,000 of that is for a public health nurse, which we don't have in Sherborn. So that would net apples to apples, 178,000, which is $11 per capita, but obviously they're a bigger town. I think to make clear the sort of differential we're seeing between, for example, 178 at Holliston, which again is 100% septic, 100% well, with that caveat, versus Sherborn, is Holliston is budgeting $6,000 for food inspections. And I'm glad to see we're down from 15,000, but the 9,000 is still a good bit more than Holliston. Holliston has, as we all know, a great number of food establishments, including a number of cable service restaurants, and so on. So that is part of the picture. And given that those sorts of differentials between comparable towns, I guess my first question, I have one other, is, how are you thinking on bringing your budget down?
In terms of salaries or in terms of just in general?
Yeah, I didn't break these down by salary, but yeah, that budget in general.
Yeah. So just to go on your point a little bit more, this was my first time doing a budget on this level, and I was curious as to see how other towns that had similar demographics to Sherborn had their budget. So I also looked at the Carlisle budget. I also looked at Air, I don't know if that's how you say it, their budget, the Dover budget, Millis, and I also looked at Oak Bluffs, which is on the Cape, just because we're seeing a lot that the Cape has similar concerns to us, and I was looking at their personnel budget breakdown and just was looking at everything. And I would say where we differ the most would be the health agent salary. However, that is based on the years of experience that our current agent has had in Sherborn and the work that he does and the volume of work that's happening. I don't know if anybody else from the Board of Health wants to comment on that, but I think it's reflective. The hourly rate has been reflective of the cost of living adjustments that have happened throughout the years. And the agent has been consistently budgeted at 13 hours per week. However, in 2025 alone, our agent reviewed 168 separate applications that came in 2025. So we had 96 applications for either wells, disposal works, installations, or soil testing. And there were 72 building applications that the Board of Health reviewed in 2025. So that's 168 separate applications. However, that does not account for the fact that a Board of Health application in Sherborn is considered active for 2 years. So we often have applications, from the previous years that come in and will ask questions. And when realtors or real estate agents come and ask questions, or anybody who's prospectively looking to move to town, our agent spends a lot of time asking questions. And because our regulations in Sherborn are more stringent than Title V, oftentimes it will occasionally require, not oftentimes it will occasionally it will require further consultation with state representatives or additional contacts in the state as well, and communication with the board and board chairs and things of that nature. And it's not just permits. Our agent is also responsible for inspecting farm pond, providing building application consultations, and addressing various nuisance concerns, investigating beaver complaints, holding pre-construction meetings, and providing guidance to our board as well.
So the other thing I'll say about budget is, I know I provided information last year to advisory about it was post-town meeting about Dover's budget compared to Sherborn's budget. And granted, it's a larger town, but we've had a lot of very large projects coming into town that Dover has tended not to see, although may start to see soon in Dover. And their budget is significantly higher than ours. I can't recall exactly what it was, but
248, I think. I guess
full-time equivalents, and they have approximate full-time equivalent employees. And Dover has something like 2.7 something full-time equivalents, so more staff in Dover. So the cost is higher. They're very similar, but we are very similar to Carlisle. And I've communicated with Carlisle on various technical issues over time. And I remember something that they have some slightly different way of managing their budget, but I can't recall. And I could look into that if that helps.
Well, I just looked at the number of comps. These are the ones that stood out, Carlisle, because geographically and demographically it's similar, in Holliston because they're right next door and they're much bigger. And yet they're lower in some of their costs. And I understand the comparison with Dover, but without getting too folksy about it, if I'm on a budget and buying a new car, I'm going to talk to the guy who bought a Chevy, not the guy who bought the Rolls Royce. It's just for fun. And I guess one item of concern, because the health agent is, there's so many hours for the health agent. So it is my understanding that it is possible under some combination of hours worked and longevity for a benefit exempt position to become eligible for some benefits. And that would in effect be creating a benefited position without prior approval, which is something creating benefit positions alone is something that we can look at very carefully. I don't know if you know the parameters of that, Jeremy can fill you in, but I'm just wondering if you're planning to monitor that or work to prevent the unexpected creation of a benefited or effectively benefited position.
I don't know the parameters of a benefited position. I was under the impression it had to be over 20 hours for a certain number of years, but the health agent has only been an employee of the town, not as long as he's worked in the town, because for several years he was just a contractor. So I don't know the parameters of that, but if that's something that advisory is concerned about, I think it's definitely worth taking note of and developing a system to ensure that, we're not creating a benefited position where we don't want to. So I think if I knew the parameters of that,
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, I just wasn't sure about that. So I didn't know that was a thing. I thought that had to get approved.
Well, there are two kind of thresholds. There's the local personnel administration plan, the town bylaw. Offers benefits to part-time employees that work over 20 hours per week. However, per state law, if an employee works an aggregate of so many hours in a certain time frame over the course of the past year, they may be eligible for benefits under state law. So that's, I think, what Penn alluding to, that state trigger.
Right.
Do you happen to know what that hour?
We can give you some details on that so that it's something that
I will
monitor.
that.
Because we have received guidance in the past from you and have monitored that. I guess that reason, and then the longevity issue, which I thought was some kind of just additional bonus, something. Only heard about it being applied once, but
what's that?
Longevity issue. Because the health agent has not been an employee for very long, it's just been since 2016 or 17 when the town moved from having agents as consultants over to agents as part-time employees. So don't think, I forget what the longevity is, but
Yeah, I mean, like,
it's a lot of years with the town before.
yeah, the personnel administration plan relatively recently, a meeting, approved a stipend for longevity, and part-time positions are eligible for that, but it's a ratio of their part-time hours to the full hours. But they are eligible for that stipend.
Since something like 30 years though, or
And,
longevity?
well, I can't remember. It was a tiered thing. I don't remember when when it first kicks in. I think it's
at 10 years. The employee has to be there for 5 or 10 years, 15 years. It breaks down like that. Up until 30 years.
Just an additional question, isn't it that they have to be benefited for that period of time?
That's correct. They have to be benefit eligible to be eligible for longevity.
I was confused when I was doing this for Jean, our administrative assistant, who's been there for 20 years. She's only been benefited for, I think, 4 or 5 years. So that's
Michael?
Oh, like the idea of doing comparisons with other towns, in terms of their budgets. I'll just give a word of caution when I've done it for the Conservation Commission. You really do have to dig in to what's going on. For example, Dover couldn't tell for the Conservation Commission budget, the fact that they basically have a lot of the fees paid directly from the individual to a consultant that doesn't even go through the town budget. So if you're trying to figure out how much is spent on conservation issues by residents in Dover, you would have to, it's not that easy to figure out, for example. So you really do have to dig carefully into each town's way that they do it, figure out what's comparable or not comparable. It's a little frustrating, but it's just something that you have to just be careful about.
And when you were looking at some of those other towns, thank you, Michael. Could you flesh out whether or not the administrator was also the health agent?
Yes. I believe that is the case in Carlisle. I know that is the case in Holliston, and I believe it is also the case. Those are the two I could speak about, Carlisle and Holliston. And I didn't get a chance to get all the details, but those are the two I got.
Excuse me. So I've spoken with the director in Carlisle, who does not fill the role of director as a lot of other towns. She's doing the well and the septic. She may do some inspections, does not do the well and the septic for sure. And that does require more certifications and much more time. So it's not still called.
Sorry. In Holliston or in Carlisle?
In Carlisle.
In Carlisle, they have an agent and a clerical administrative person, and they're two different people. So it's not a director per se. It's clerical, nurse, inspection, agent, and an animal inspector. And in what were the other towns that you asked about?
Holliston and Carlisle.
Oh, I'm not sure about Holliston, but
Just had one quick question. It looked like it went down artificially because it looks like a big jump on the 92% and the 38, but that it was like sort of artificially down for FY26 because the jump this year just looks like it's close to what the fiscal years were before.
so that's how I knew that the positions were being under budgeted for what they were contracted for. The budgets have been reflecting the actuals, and we've been about 12% over budget, I believe, off the top of my head. In those 3 fiscal years that I looked at, 23, 24, and 25. And actually, if you look at the FY26 actual that we're expecting to spend, it's only about a 2% increase in salary.
So just to build, George, on what you were asking, the fiscal 23, 24, and 25, actual compared to budget,
Yeah.
the Board of Health was over budget by about 18,000 in each of those 3 years. I'm not sure what's going to happen in fiscal 26. I think you said you're probably going to run over budget. And I just want to bring to your attention, which you probably already know, that a department in the aggregate is not allowed to expend more than their appropriation. It would be an impermissible expenditure. So if you plan on being over budget, I think you need to go through a process to ask for what the intent is of the advisory committee and the select board about making a year-end interdepartmental transfer. Otherwise, exceeding budget is unlawful. It's impermissible.
So, since this year I have not been as deeply involved with the budget, so that others can share with me during that. So for years we were advised, even though we could see what projects were on the horizon the last number of years, I'm feeling less confident that we know what next year is going to look like. But we were advised that if we were not absolutely positive that we were going to need more funds to keep everything level, but we would always share that information with advisory about what we thought it was going to be based on what we could see at the pipeline and how the market was doing, things like that. And then for the years that we went over, for last year, actually, we were over budget for I don't remember the exact numbers, something like $14,000, but we had 12,000 in increased fees that were collected that covered most of that because it was closely tied to number of projects. So I appreciate that, but every year we have shared what we thought it would be, but the policy had been to stay level unless, to not speculate, is what we're told. To not speculate that there would be a change.
Just to be clear, my interpretation at the moment is that expenditures cannot exceed appropriations. It's impermissible. So the town doesn't have the authority to make the payment. Unless there's this would not apply to a reserve fund transfer. It's not infrequent and unusual. Could be available, a supplemental appropriation could be available at town meeting in April, I suppose, if you know at that point, if you can get it in the warrant in time. Or there is a process where during May, June, and part of July, you can ask for a year-end interdepartmental transfer. But it may not be available. We don't know if it will be available. Because it's been, I think, a little bit loose about departments making year-end projections about what they're going to need. So I don't think that any department should assume that they're going to get a year-end transfer, regardless of the fee income. It's an expenditure issue.
And again, every year, I've said this is what we think, looking at the prior years, and every year we were asked to stay level with the COLA increase.
For your budget.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm speaking something a little bit different. And that is, as fiscal 26 proceeds, if in March, the aggregate budget has been spent, it's impermissible to enter into any additional liabilities. Town just can't pay it, shouldn't be paying.
And we'll take direction on how we address that, and that would be.
Forthcoming.
I mean, that must have happened before, right?
It has before, and
Because you're right. My question was more to you. I was trying to understand how that
could happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It wasn't really a.
Sarah, do you have a point?
I just have a question about the total versus how much we're paying. There are several line items that have been spent thus far, but I are not expecting to be touched for the remainder of the fiscal year because they're set expenses. And that is budgeted in $2,200 for the kiosk. We're not expecting to spend that money. I have approval from the state that we can use our opioid funds for that. So we will not be touching that money. And for our office supplies, we're all set. Just cleaned out the trailer. We have 100 clipboards if anyone needs one, and pens and things of that nature. And we found a lot more office supplies, so we don't expect to be spending too much more out of that budget. Might be a few things here and there we might need to supplement. And there was one other. I think that was it. But
So within the department, intra-departmental line items can be transferred. It's when you're asking for another department to transfer appropriation from that department to yours, that shouldn't be expected necessarily, because we don't know if what departments are going to have available appropriations.
Second, this 187 is a lot of money on your salary expenses.
Mhm.
So you could take credit for some of the under expenditure expenses to cover some salary. But the 187 number, bottom line, is the one to watchful for.
And I hope, I'm not picking specifically on the Board of Health budget. I'm making the statement so all departments can hear that. We're, as everyone can imagine, in a very tight fiscal situation, and the appropriate controls should be in place. And I hope people can understand that, not think that they're being singled out in any way.
We do understand that it's, again, we're a board that's driven, a department that's driven primarily by meeting the needs, people coming with needing permits and all sort of things. So it's not at all predictable nor level throughout the year and from year to year. So difficult to do. So again, we followed the advice I've gotten for the last, while I've been on the board, dozen or more years, whatever it is now. And we've always been advised otherwise, similar to the snow plowing budget. You don't know if there's going to be snow or not. And then
That is specifically exempt by state law. So snow and ice can exceed their appropriation permissibly. There are 4 categories that are permissible is permissible deficit spending. They're specified by statute.
What are the other 3?
Judgment, natural disaster.
About legal fees.
To my knowledge, at the moment, legal fees would be an impermissible deficit spending.
Okay.
More research could be more research for.
More research forthcoming.
Believe it. How much our budgets go. But yes, it would be interesting to see a different policy, because in the past, this whole push for level funded and what the COLA is driven it to, because a number of years ago, the approach was, okay, you budget at the minimum, and then you ask for free cash transfers later on in the year, but which is still part of a process that you do ahead of time. So in that sense, it fits with what you're saying. But there was that sort of sense. They increased what they were putting into the free cash reserves. instead of necessarily spreading it out over departments who expect to spend more. But they said, you come to us later. If you really need, if you find that increased costs above level funding to occur. But it gets a little tricky. I mean, you, I think last year talked about how, what do people really need? What are we really budgeting versus this constraint of level funding all the time, which can be fun. Sometimes you can go down, sometimes you can go up, but yeah, no, it's something that we're always keeping aware of. Nobody wants to spend above their amount.
Right, we're facing a new set of constraints that perhaps we didn't defeat several years ago. So we have to prepare for it.
Oh, what is that?
We're approaching levy limit. And we just need to be careful and judicious with the spending. You know, we want to be continually to add to free cash, but we need to know in advance. We can't do it after the fact. We can't do interdepartmental transfers after the fact. You can't spend above your appropriation and then ask for forgiveness.
It's
not going to happen.
Don't take anything I say to mean that. It was just a matter of how you do that timing of it all. But yes, I think the 2.5 prop is an interesting challenge. My different views about how much that is the constraint of fiscal responsibility versus it's the nature of inflation, where it's the 2.5 is arbitrary to begin with. So, but that's a whole other philosophical or not a policy issue. For family.
Alex or Adam, did you have a question?
I had a question just about, and I apologize, you may have addressed this, stepped out, but what was the justification for the jump in health agent hours, projected health agent hours from 700 to up another 230, 240, 900?
They used a forecasting model based on the previous hours that were worked in the past 3 fiscal years, which is all the data that we have readily available through our payroll system. I have to go through it and pull a bunch of numbers, but I used a forecasting program system to calculate the expected number of hours for FY26, and then the upper bound and lower bound, middle bound, and I tried to come up with a number that was the most even for what's actually been seen. So we can, I can send this to anyone because I just finished it, but it's essentially it's a forecasting program, which based on the number of hours worked in the first half, then the second, like I broke the fiscal years in half because I did this in December. So it from started in December of 2022 until December of 2025. And I used a forecasting program to calculate.
So that's not based on, or is that based on like discipline? Like,
No, that's based on the observed number of hours worked.
just hours. So
Yeah.
not looking ahead at potential projects or, potential inspections based on economy or new builds, any sort of initial.
No, it kind of goes to the 2-year limit where we'll get people who will submit things and then a year and a half later they'll come back and want to do it again, or they'll want to change something, or they'll start, for example, they'll start building a well, and then all of a sudden you won't hear from them for a while, and then they want to sell their property, and then we have to chase down all this information about the well, but they applied for it a few years ago, but we didn't know that they had. So there's just a lot that in the office space that we don't know what's going on in town, and we can't make assumptions because that's how they say about making an assumption. So I just used the observed and also what I know about other people who work in the field, that the variation that I found and saw between the hours different week by week. The only statistically significant differences were when the agent was on vacation. And I was the only statistically, there was no statistically significant difference.
Paul?
Hi, sir. So I'm curious about the special revenue fund balance and whether you had plans to use some of those cover expenses in And just knowing like what you're committed to do and what you're planning to do.
So there's two for the Board of Health. We have the opioid settlement and the immunization clinic. The opioid settlements, it's very specific as to how you can and cannot spend them. It is a 70-page document as to how you can and cannot spend them. I've been communicating with different state representatives, and the board members as well have been super duper helpful. And that's, we were able to eliminate the disposal kiosk maintenance line item because we're able to use the opioid settlement fund for that. Unfortunately, you can't use it to supplement any positions unless you are hiring specifically a harm reduction coordinator. But the amount of financial support we get from the opioid settlement it has to do with how many school teachers you have employed at your public schools that live in your town. That's how it's distributed. I don't know why. And so we aren't going to be seeing an increase over time to support a harm reduction. Like it wouldn't make sense. So that's very limited. And the immunization clinic is a revolving fund that we get from the state where we get reimbursed from purchasing vaccines. However, we've been without a medical director, so we haven't had a vaccine clinic. And to my knowledge, we can't use that for anything else.
So the opiate settlement then is a general strategy that, given the restrictions, like where you can spend it, you will use it to cover expenses where possible.
100%.
Sarah, I have just a I don't even know if I would call it a philosophical question, but should food establishments or the users of the Board of Health agent cover the cost of the Board of Health agent? Should the cost be a burden on the taxpayers of the town, or should it be a burden of applicants?
So for the food inspections, it's actually interesting that you mentioned that. As you were talking about overexpending, Millis has a revolving account for food inspections because they hire a consultant. So every time an application comes in for a food inspection, then that's how they fund their inspector. And we will see with the proposed fee increases that's actually likely what's going to happen for both of our agent positions, where we're going to see, assuming we get the same number of applications. Sorry, I keep losing things. It's printed really weird. For the agent position, this one's to load, not loaded, work. We're gonna see about $72,000 come in from well septics and other permit fees, and we'll see about 14,800 for the food inspector with the fee schedule adjustments.
The effective date on that new rate?
The board will be reviewing them at the next meeting, which is the 11th, and then they'll be holding a public hearing, assuming that they all are on good terms with it, the following meeting, which is March 4th.
And if it passes on March 4th, when would the rates become effective?
That would have to be a discussion among the board as to how they wish it implemented. There's a few different ways that I've spoken with other boards and other departments as to how they've done it and how I've seen it done in other departments, where sometimes it's done immediately after a public hearing and it's the next day it's effective. I've seen people wait for the beginning of the following month, next fiscal year, the next calendar year. It really depends on what the board wants to do and what they think will be best for the town. I've seen it could go a number of ways.
How do you control the billing? How do you know that every property inspected actually is billed and paid? What's the communication process?
When you say inspected, what do you...
The food truck comes, needs an inspection. How does he get billed or she get billed?
So for a food truck to come and get inspected, they have to submit their application. The application is not considered complete until we receive the associated permit fee. And then once it's complete, then it will be reviewed. That's actually one of the administrative tasks that I've taken off of the food inspector to hopefully allow him to focus solely on inspections. Where I look at the application, I make sure that they have everything. It's quite a long list and it's completely dependent on the type of establishment it is. So we make sure that they have everything. They send us the fee. And then for, say, a temporary food establishment, then the day of the event, our inspector will go and conduct his inspection. But if they operate and they haven't submitted the application to operate, there's no way for us to know unless I'm misspeaking, but essentially they don't get a permit until they've paid and they don't get an inspection. For a temporary food permit, they don't get the permit until inspection. It's kind of a weird circle.
Basically, we collect fees up front, the application, and then launch them, whatever analyses, inspections, et cetera, are associated. So what becomes a little on the philosophical side is there's a huge range in how much time seemingly similar applications might take from one applicant or project to another. And we've added, I believe there are more levels now in the new fee structure to address, another revision and increasing fees. We never used to see lots of revisions, but haven't seen it. It is time consuming. It is not necessarily simple the first time around because everything has to be checked again when there's a revision. So we're trying to improve some of that to capture the costs, but capturing that the people who come in and very experienced engineers who are designing systems and know Sherborn's regulations well can fly through, and others take a lot of hand-holding and on one level, the ultimate goal of health is to have safe food establishments to make sure they understand what they need to be doing and why they're testing the water and maybe guide people through who don't have that experience yet. So we do play some role in like consulting and trying to recruit consultants on the side, but it's complicated.
Very good. Questions? Divya, please.
All right. This has been so informative, but as far as like the philosophical idea of being able to cover the permit fees to be able to cover what we pay for the inspector, whether it is health, food, etc. Having owned a food establishment myself for the longest time, I could tell you that food inspection is multi-level complicated, especially if it is going to be in a different town. And even though I have pushed for advancing the decision on the revised fee schedule with Board of Health and Conservation Commission, because I think it is time we do it. But thinking about it as higher fees for everybody to be able to cover it might drive those little businesses away from Sherborn. So many of the little food businesses that come into Sherborn for temporary businesses, they can't really afford the higher fee structure for that particular day. So I think trying to strike a balance between where we are covering most of our expenses plus keeping the businesses is where they should head. That is all I had to say.
Divya brings up an interesting point about what the market was there. And so when we first started working in shared services, which people don't know, there's now the state, especially after COVID, and because we're maybe the only state in the country that has Board of Health operating on a local level, municipality going municipality versus most of the country is county-based, regional. So we're duplicating efforts in lots of towns. So they funded a program to get towns together and seeing what they could share among them. So Sherborn is with Dover, Medfield, and Needham. So Needham's a bit different than Sherborn, where the polar opposites there in the group. In any case, so I brought the issue about fees to them because we knew we wanted to update our fees. And that was of interest to all of the towns in the group. And then they hired consultants to work on a fee calculator, more tweaking, and Sarah went and dived into that deeply for applying it here in town. But one of the comparisons that's also done is run the calculator, but look at what others ended up charging for fees and see how we compare. And so I know that, don't know if it's still the case, but in the past, town government, especially select board, was concerned about how we did stack up against the fees of other towns. So we're trying to walk some line at the moment, but there needs to be a policy change. Someone wants to communicate that to us. That could be looked at. Some way of fully covering the costs. Applicants fully covering the cost. I don't know. It would be a big change in how it's done.
Yeah, I don't think it's really, I mean, it's a public health issue. So even if you stay in your house and never go out anywhere, mostly everybody doesn't just stay in their house, they go out, and it's really a public health issue. Is why you have inspections, food inspections and things like that. So it is more of a general public type of thing than the service provider should be bearing all of the costs of that. So that, I mean, that's kind of how I look at Board of Health issues, more of it's a public health issue that we all bear that burden, would be my philosophy anyway.
Anybody else? Very good. Thank you.
Sarah, what's your position? I'm keeping the minutes. I don't.
And we have one last category. Makes up a big percentage of our budget, which was employee benefits. Deb, are you still available?
I'm still here. Yeah.
Good. Are you presenting or Jeremy?
I think, I assume Jeremy was going to do it since he was there.
Yeah, let's tag team down.
All right, sounds good.
Let me put it up.
Interrupt, did you, I know the next thing is the special revenue fund, did you still want me to stay for that? For the,
I think we covered. Thank you.
Was this employee benefits places?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is in the undistributed expenses section of the budget. For that category are employee benefits, including the Middlesex County retirement assessment for employee pension, workers' compensation, unemployment compensation, the group health insurance, which is one of the larger line items in this budget, which covers health insurance for employees and for retirees, should they choose supplemental health insurance, group life insurance, Medicare, and some miscellaneous professional services. So the cost drivers here are the two larger line items, the Middlesex County retirement, which is an assessment the county retirement system provides member communities. There's about 40 communities that are members. And there's an assessment based on the number of retirees, the number of employees that may eventually retire. And there's an assessment that's provided to the town has to pay annually. Generally, that's run about 6% increase year over year, but it's gone up slightly. And that's currently that assessment's at an 8% increase. It's really something that's just given to the town, that it's a town obligation that we must pay.
Is this number an estimate or we actually were told this is?
That is the total number. We've been provided a letter. We get a letter annually with the assessment for the coming year. We've provided that. So this is the real number that will not change.
Yeah, that actually includes a discount. If you pay it right on July the 1st, you get like a 1% discount, and that includes the 1% discount.
So since Deb pays the bills really quickly, we've budgeted to account for that 1% discount.
Yeah.
And then the other big line item here is the health insurance provided to employees and retirees. We currently have health benefits provided through the MIA, Mass Interlocal Insurance Agency. They've asked us to budget for a 15% increase in the premium costs. That's what we've been carrying in the budget. However, recently, that number has been refined to a range for all their member communities. They're now they gave a range of 4% to 14%, with an average of 8%. We have a meeting with Maya on the 25th where they'll be providing us with our accurate estimate to include and refine that number. So traditionally, Sherborn has been in the average range for the Maya communities. So if indeed we are for this year, based on our experience, that may be an 8% increase instead of the 15. We don't know that yet. In addition, the select board have started a process to change the plan design for employees, which will go to a sort of a bargaining session with the Public Employee Committee. And the select board have put forward or will be putting forward a proposal to change the plan design, which will help mitigate an increase. That has not been budgeted for, so that's not yet reflected in this budget line because that's a process that needs to play out for the next month or so. That could lead to some additional reduction in that budget line increase.
Deb, do you have a projection of fiscal 26?
Yeah, we're running about $200,000 under budget for fiscal year 26 at this point in time. We have to estimate how many people think we're going to take insurance, and not as many people took as insurance as we budgeted, so it's a little bit lower than we thought. So we're being very conservative with our budget request.
And necessarily so, because we don't know how many folks are going to, through some life change or their spouse's life change may, if they're benefit eligible, they may request to come on the town's benefits. And it's worthy of noting that all the employees of the Pine Elementary School, the school department employees, are covered under this budget for health insurance and for unemployment insurance and workers' compensation. So this budget carries that expense for school departments that are employed at Pine Hill Elementary. And that has been, can be difficult. Those are difficult numbers to estimate when they may or may not employ folks. Our unemployment claims, many of them originate from Pine Hill Elementary School. So that estimate necessarily has to have some, we can't go right down to the existing number of employees that take health insurance. We have to have some buffer so that we have some ability to cover folks if should they request benefits. But we've included in the budget, the initial budget, what we believe is a worst case scenario, this 50%. That number will be coming down. We just don't know how much it will come down yet, but we'll know that in the coming month.
So this is one of the last items I imagine that will adjust in our
Correct. Yep.
We have a meeting with Maya this month where we'll have should no plan design changes be made, we'll know what that cost will be. But we do also hope to make plan design changes. We just don't know. We have to bargain that first.
Okay.
Let's see. It's the other one of note here. This operating budget also includes the operating budget transfer to the OPEB stabilization account of $100,000. That's combined with $100,000 from free cash to make your total annual contribution of $200,000 to the OPEB trust fund.
That process of 200 a year goes to try to attempt to fully fund that with a target date of 2040 or 2045. Is that what that comes up?
Yeah, that's every other year. There's an audit done on that liability. There's no current mandate to fully fund that liability. However, it's an accounting liability that the town needs to carry. At some point that trust, the balance in that trust is available for use. That's the whole idea, is that it builds up enough to be able to offset OPEB, which are other post-employment benefits. So, that accounting that's done every other year shows that Sherborn has made a good stride at it and contributing $200,000 per year, and what's been accumulated. You're doing well with your OPEB liability.
So the pension is mandate. That's 2040.
2040, yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Ask a
There's
question.
no current mandate for OPEB. However, it needs to be accounted as a liability. That was, a couple decades ago, it wasn't even a line item in anybody's budget. It wasn't a thing until it needed to be. It was a change in the accounting process or accounting standards that require towns to account for it. That is a potential, depending on town policy and town's comfort on how quickly you're funding that liability, you may, as a community, decide to slow down on your contributions.
Ask a question on that.
Yes, please.
If we slow down, does that have any effect on our bond rating? Potentially,
Possibly. I mean, we've informally inquired the OPEB auditors, what that might look like. They did feedback that it was an extreme mark against us. Deb, what was the wording they used?
Yeah, it was, it may or may not, or something very vague like that. It wasn't like, oh yeah, that'd make a difference, or it wasn't like, he was pretty vague, like he didn't think it would have much of an impact.
Yeah, and it wasn't, oh, geez, don't do that.
Yes.
Huh.
This was on the S&P Global bond rating.
No, this was reaching out to the folks that do the audit.
Yeah.
Or the
Actuarial.
There, yes.
Well, they'll just change some assumptions to make it look good. So.
That's what he said. Basically, the rate. That's what he mentioned. It's something that the calculation would change, and it wouldn't be fully funded in a certain year and be a little bit farther out, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a potential source. So, and also, this $100,000 out of the operating budget, it's possible that you still fund $200,000, but the entirety of it out of free cash instead of out of the operating budget. So this is an area that you might be able to use to help provide a balanced budget.
Excellent. I think on the reserve fund, I'd like to table that line item for another day. If nobody objects to that. Hearing none. Any other questions for, any other questions for Jeremy or Deb?
What kind of question I have in general? It sounds like there are several funds like this, OPEB trust, this general stabilization, capital stabilization reserve, and should those be looked at kind of added together about way to sort of, like, would it take money to sort of budget, if you will, and what ramifications does that have in future budgets? It just seems like,
Are you suggesting that the town use stabilization funds to fund your budget this year? I would recommend against that, but is that, I'm just wanting clarity on your question.
The stabilization, those other items are discretionary and generally come out of free cash as opposed to an appropriation.
what I'm suggesting is, if the town does decide to use some of these types of funds, maybe looking at them all together to see where would be the best place to sort of fund the budget through a stabilization fund, right? Like whether it be free cash or the free or general stabilization capital or the open trust. It would seem like if you need to get some extra money from somewhere, if you will, you look at all those together. See which would be the most prudent.
Each of those stabilization accounts requires appropriation by town meeting, 2/3 vote. And each of those should only be used for certain things. So your capital stabilization should be used towards capital. So that has built up some funds after several years of contribution. So that is a source of funding for your capital program. But your general stabilization, I'd suggest that the town is not in a situation that you would want to tap into that currently.
You would mention that earlier. Well,
Tapping into your stabilization would affect your bond rating.
That's an OGs, don't do that.
Last resort. You're not there.
I'm just looking to see what those balances are. I thought I had a table here.
We have, but
So the general stabilization in June of 25 was about a 1.1 million. Capital was a small balance, maybe 500. Those are really the two.
and they've grown since then. That may not have included the contributions for Y26 and the interest earning. And the levels of your stabilization accounts, your stabilization funds are set by your financial policies. You know, so much percentage of your budget is what you're targeting to have in your stabilization accounts. You currently meet those requirements from your financial policies. Drawing from them, you may be out of compliance with your financial policies, which again would affect your bond rating.
are there any grants available to fund health insurance?
Fortunately, no, there's not. That's a town liability. There's no grants available.
Anything else from Jeremy at that?
Mhm.
Thank you, thank you.
Any advisory committee member reports? Anyone want to volunteer for one or?
Rec Commissioner, I heard us meeting, next week. And, also capital budget capital budget committee meeting met last night. And we did mention about some point, maybe, starting the discussion possibly and get their thoughts. The other two members and Laura too, on possibly having, capital budget in a sense being merged or come under advisory. We spoke how the historical part of it, piece was usually just capital was in a silo and advisory was just usually, handling operating, but that's changed and morphed and trying to get one.
Have you gotten
Better
through all?
communication.
Have you gotten through all the requests?
No, so we want,
27.
no, so we were thinking about having a combined meeting too. Possibly, I think we on the next week.
Meeting next week. I have on my calendar, we're meeting on the 11th. Is that not true?
The 11th is a meeting with the school committees. A joint meeting. The regional school committee, the Dover warrant committee, and the Sherborn advisory committee. Then the following week is school vacation and we don't have anything scheduled. So our next meeting is February 25. And I think what we'll have on the agenda is that we begin to hear a bit about the other warrant articles, perhaps some revenue projections. And we'll probably have a somewhat better idea about revised budget items.
So Nora, I think we had sort of talked about budget joining next week on the 11th, but that's not.
That's not gonna be.
Yeah.
Right, the next time we could do it, unless we had an additional meeting, would be on the 25th,
Yeah, okay.
just kind of late.
Yes.
I do have a report.
Please.
So Adam and I, and others got an email from Zach, or the fire chief. And was reporting thanks to some grants and modest decrease in the operating budget and also modest reduction in one of the capital requests. About 1,500 and 4,500 respectively.
All right.
So we have a meeting tomorrow night, joint school committees, meeting with Donald, Warren and Don and Beth. So because I think they understand that both Dover and Sherborn have some budget challenges this year, right? So I think they'll explain that school liaisons tomorrow.
I've been very impressed by the cooperation from the school committees and in their efforts to reduce their requests. We'll hear more about that tomorrow, and we appreciate what they've done to date under difficult circumstances. Okay, anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? We have to do a roll call. Sorry, because Dee was on the phone.
Thanks for nothing, Divya.
Laura?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Alan? Adam?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Divya?
Aye.
And?
Aye.
And I, Stephen Bonder, am I as well. We are adjourned at 9:26 p.m. Thank you, everybody.